What's up, everybody on YouTube? AJ Russ back to discuss another video, and today we will be recapping NFL Week 16 of the 2023 season. Week 16, man, we are in a very crucial time of this NFL season. Only a few weeks left until the playoffs start. It's really wild. This season has literally flown by. Let me know in the comments down below some of your predictions, how you think the playoffs are going to go, how in both conferences, which teams you think are going to get the first seed and things of that nature. But man, there are a lot of good games, a lot of entertaining matchups this week in week 16, and I'm really blabbering on right now, so let's go on and get into that. But before I do, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. Make sure you hit the like button on this video, and of course this video will be posted after Christmas, so definitely hope y'all had a Merry Christmas and New Year's as well coming up. 2024, big year for everyone. Hope it's a great year for y'all. So with that being said, let's get into these week 16 matchups. The first game that took place, of course, was Thursday Night Football between the Los Angeles Rams and the New Orleans Saints. Two teams for sure that were battling for playoff positioning in the NFC. Of course, for the Rams in terms of a wild card spot, because of course in the NFC West, that division is locked up by the 49ers for sure. And for the Saints, it's a game that they dropped, losing 30-22. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers really are in full pursuit of obtaining the NFC South, getting that home playoff game. And really the Rams, they have been cooking for the past month and some change. Matthew Stafford had a really good game, completed 24 out of his 34 passing attempts, threw for 328 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Really a good game overall in the running game and passing game. Kyron Williams had a great game, had 22 carries, 140 rushing yards and a touchdown. And of course, Puka Nacua. CJ Stroud did not exist, like I said before. He would for sure be Offensive Rookie of the Year. And of course, CJ Stroud hasn't played, but still, Puka, he's been hooping. 9 receptions, 164 receiving yards and a touchdown. Just a really dominant game for the Los Angeles Rams. Of course, it was close, but there was at points of the game where it was like 17-7. So the Rams, they really controlled this game. And they're playing really good football. And I don't think really a lot of teams in the NFC, some of those top seeds, would want to see the Rams. Now, of course, if the 49ers were to play against them like in the second round, I think that they would dominate them. But I think that if the Rams, coincidentally and oddly enough, if they were to play against the Detroit Lions, who we know they swapped quarterbacks in 2021, resulting in the Rams winning the Super Bowl, and of course Jared Goff going against the Lions. But if we had that matchup in the first round, that would be a chef kiss to NFL fans. A rematch, seeing Jared Goff play against his former team in the Rams and vice versa with Matthew Stafford, that would be beautiful. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, if the Rams were to win that game, because the Rams, they're really talented. They're really good. They did lose some pieces on defense, but they still have that all-time great defensive player in Aaron Donald on the defensive end. And like I said, their offense has been playing really well. Still have Cooper Kupp. So we will see, man. It's going to be interesting. I definitely think that the Rams will make the playoffs. They now have an 8-7 record. And for the Saints, it's really tough, man. I don't think that they're going to win a division. I think that the Bucs will, like I said a second ago, but only time will tell. Into a couple Saturday game matchups. I love this time of the year because there's Saturday games now. In the NFL season, we have that as well in week 17, so looking forward to that. But in terms of this game, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they were hearing a lot of critics from the George Pickens situation, not blocking for Jalen Warren, things of that nature, cultural questions with Mike Tomlin, but they really dominated and had an appropriate win, winning the game against the Cincinnati Bengals 34-11, an important divisional game, of course, with both of these teams trying to make the playoffs in the AFC, which is super loaded and stacked. Of course, for the Bengals, they have been playing really well, of course, with Jake Browning stepping into the fold with Joe Burrow's season-ending injury. And like I said about Josh Dobbs' Linsanity run, now Jake Browning's Linsanity run is over. He did have 325 passing yards, but he also had 3 picks. So just a really demoralizing and frustrating game if you were a fan of Who Dey Nation. But for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they played great. Of course, I mentioned George Pickens earlier. He had a huge bounce-back game, really silencing critics, honestly. He had 4 receptions for 195 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, had 2 touchdowns for over 65-plus receiving yards. So just really balling. And really, of course, with this time of the year being the Christmas season, Mason Rudolph played really well. Had 290 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Just played a really good game, wasn't doing too much. Played way better than Mitchell Trubisky had. And they were questioning if Kenny Pickett were able to play in the game, but obviously he was ruled out. And I think that you should stick it out with Mason Rudolph for sure. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If he plays solid next week in week 17, keep playing with him. Now, of course, if he were to mess up tremendously and things of that nature, then you put Kenny Pickett back in the game and they might activate him for week 17. But we will see, man. It's a really good win, a really good sign for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Still trying to compete for the playoffs for sure. I feel like if they can get to 10 wins, they'll have a great chance. But it's going to be crazy because I think that someone's in the AFC is going to get 10 wins and still not make the playoffs. I mean, it's going to come down to tiebreakers and things of that nature, but a really good win for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The second Saturday game that took place was a matchup between the Buffalo Bills and the Los Angeles Chargers. Really a weird game, of course. In the week prior, the Buffalo Bills dominated the Dallas Cowboys, and they barely squeaked by the Chargers in this game, winning 24-22. Of course, Josh Allen had a good game-winning drive that set up that field goal to win the game, but still very weird. But like I say, it's a week-to-week league for sure. Of course, the Chargers, they fired Brandon Staley after that dominating loss to the Las Vegas Raiders, losing by 40, which is super embarrassing. And now they started Easton Stick with the absence of Justin Herbert being out for the year, so they really weren't playing for too much, but it's a week-to-week league. Like they say, any given Sunday and in this case, any given Saturday, because the Chargers, they almost won this game, and that would have been a stinker of a loss for the Buffalo Bills because they needed to win this game, but they did, and they're 9-6 now. Really in prime position to make the playoffs, and it's going to be an interesting game when they play against the Miami Dolphins as well in that division because they dominated them earlier in the season, and despite them barely winning this game, they still find a way to win, so that's a good dub for them for sure. Josh Allen had 237 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Not too crazy, but still won the game, did what they needed to do. James Cook had a dominant performance against the Dallas Cowboys. Not as dominant, having 20 carries and 70 rushing yards, but he still is a really good threat for the Buffalo Bills in the running game. And of course, when Josh Allen throws those checkdowns, being another receiving option for the Buffalo Bills. And Gabe Davis, he had a really good game, had 4 receptions for 130 receiving yards and a touchdown. But there's a conversation for sure about Stephon Diggs. He hasn't had a 100 receiving yard game, I think, since October. It's ridiculous, man. I know there's been a lot of chatter, of course, about him potentially winning out and things of that nature. I mean, they're winning right now, but I know for him, and of course being a receiver, I know the receiver's mindset is like, man, if I don't get the ball, I mean, what's the point? So it's definitely an interesting situation in that aspect. We'll see what goes on in the offseason in Buffalo in terms of Stephon Diggs, but a good win for the Buffalo Bills. And like I said, if they make the playoffs, which I fully expect them to, they're going to be a tough out, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make the AFC Championship game or get into Super Bowl 58. That would not be surprising, guys. This next game that took place was really a game that wasn't too important for these teams, except for personal pride and building morale ultimately. The New York Jets and the Washington Commanders. The Jets did win the game, winning 30-28. A really good win for them, and honestly, they were blowing out the Commanders at first, winning 27-0. Sam Howell was playing absolutely awful. He only completed 6 out of his 22 passing attempts, had an interception, so they ended up benching him and putting Jacoby Brissett in the game, who played better. They did that last week in week 15 as well, and he was playing really solid. Brissett completed 10 out of his 13 passing attempts for 100 yards and a touchdown. I mean, we're really not going to get too crazy in depth in this game. The Jets did win it, and for the Jets, like I said before, they're just trying to finish the season off strong, and I guess the same with the Commanders. The Jets are really just trying to get things ready in line for Aaron Rodgers to come back next year. They need to have a good contingency plan just in case anything were to happen, because it just really fell flat in their faces this year for the 2023 season. Of course, you can't predict injury and things of that nature, but that's what happened. That's how the cookie crumbled. And of course, Aaron Rodgers' recovery has been great, but he's not going to play because that would be pointless. Obviously, they're eliminated from the playoffs, but this is a good win for them. Like I said, building morale for Washington Commanders. I fully expect them to have a new coaching staff in the 2024 season. We'll see what happens there, of course, with new ownership and things of that nature. Trying to instill a better culture. Of course, they have Magic Johnson, who's one of the stake owners as well, so he's going to try to get some good people in there to try to turn around the organization for the Commanders, but a good win for the New York Jets for sure. This next game was a good win for the Detroit Lions, winning 30-24 over the Minnesota Vikings. The Detroit Lions clinched their division for the first time in 30 years since 1993. A long time coming for them. They now have an 11-4 record. Been playing solid football over the past couple of weeks after losing to Chicago, and they've had some games, like I said, they're on fraud alert for sure. I already said in my past videos, I'm not the biggest believer, but I do think that they're a really good team and they should make the second round at least. But it's a really good win for them. Jared Goff completed 30 out of his 40 passing attempts, a really efficient game, had 257 pass yards and a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs had 2 touchdowns as well. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 12 receptions for 106 receiving yards and a touchdown. So just playing really good football. And ultimately, the biggest difference in this game was a turnover battle. Nick Mullins threw 4 picks, 4 interceptions. I feel like if you have a quarterback throwing 4 picks in any game, you're most likely going to lose that game, honestly. So it was just really a stinker of a game for the Minnesota Vikings. I really don't know what they're going to do next year, honestly. They still have a hypothetical chance to make the playoffs in the NFC if they win their next 2 games, but a lot will have to go right for them to make it. Honestly, with Justin Jefferson missing all those games, and of course he did play in this game and was dominant because we know how great he is, had 6 receptions for 141 receiving yards and a touchdown, had 6 receptions for 141 receiving yards and a touchdown. But will they bring back Kirk Cousins? I feel like if they wanted to, they would have already extended him. It'll be an interesting situation. Will they trade up in the draft to try to get one of these quarterbacks like a Jaden Daniels, who was a Heisman Trophy winner, someone seasoned out and playing a lot of college football like Bo Nix, things of that nature, or Michael Penix? It'll be interesting to see. I feel like the Vikings should go that young route if they're going to move on from Kirk Cousins. Only time will tell, but the Detroit Lions, I expect them for sure to make the second round at least, guys. I mean, there's really no excuse, and it's a good win for them for sure. 11-4 now. This next game really wasn't as close as the score indicated. The Cleveland Browns convincingly won. The Cleveland Browns convincingly won against the Houston Texans, winning 36-22. Of course, for the Houston Texans, this is the second straight game that CJ Stroud was out, so a really tough loss for them. They now have an 8-7 record, and really for the Texans, even if they don't make the playoffs, in my eyes, this has been a successful season. No one expected them to really have above 4 to 5 wins. D'Amico Ryans for sure a Coach of the Year candidate, and of course with the Cleveland Browns, Kevin Stefanski, another Coach of the Year candidate, really putting the Cleveland Browns above expectations. They now have a 10-5 record. Insane to say that after losing to Deshaun Watson for the season. Picking up Joe Flacco, of course, who was not on the team, being 38 years old, just playing really efficient and good football. In this game, he had 368 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and of course 2 interceptions, but played really well. But that's not even the story of the game. Amari freaking Cooper set the Cleveland Browns receiving yard record, having 11 receptions for 265 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, a really freaking dominant game from Amari Cooper. Of course, we know the Texans were dealing with a lot of injuries defensively and of course offensively as well. But the Browns took advantage of that, and that's what you're supposed to do. They handled business. Of course, they were up 36-7 at one point in the game, and like I said, the game did end 36-22. The Texans went on a run. They put Davis Mills in the game, who was actually playing efficient after Case Keenum injured his hand, I believe. Davis Mills had 149 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Not the most efficient completion-wise, but he was playing really good football and running the ball some. Hopefully for Texans fans in Houston, CJ Stroud is able to return for Week 17, but only time will tell with that. But for the Cleveland Browns, they're going to be a tough out in the AFC too. I'm just really looking forward to these playoffs, man, especially in the AFC, because it's going to be interesting to see if there's any upsets and things of that nature, because these teams who are wild card, they can really frighten some of those teams who are going to host playoff games, and the Browns are one of them, most definitely. This game, I'm not really too bullish about talking about, but the Green Bay Packers beat the Carolina Panthers, winning 33-30. Panthers, they had an opportunity at the end of the game to tie the game and go into overtime, but time ran out. And honestly, for the Panthers, this arguably was Bryce Young's best game in his young career in his rookie season. Of course, a lot of controversy in Carolina with their owner and how he's been running things and always moving on quickly from coaches. But Bryce Young, I think he had his best game. He completed 23 out of his 35 passing attempts, had 312 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, played really good and efficient football. But ultimately, it wasn't enough. And like I said before, the Green Bay Packers, they now have a 7-8 record. They're putting themselves in position to also compete for a playoff spot in the NFC. This team was coming off of a great win against the Philadelphia Eagles. And of course, the team I'm talking about is the Seattle Seahawks. They won this game in Week 16 against the Tennessee Titans, winning 20-17. They now have an 8-7 record. But Geno Smith did return in this game, and he played good football as well. Completed 25 out of his 36 passing attempts, had 227 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. A really good game for him. And they were able to will the win over the Tennessee Titans. And of course, Will Levis didn't play after he was injured in the game against the Texans. Ryan Tannehill played and really had a Tannehill performance in my eyes. I would really like to see Derrick Henry get traded next season. He had 19 carries for 88 rushing yards and a touchdown. Some people may say that they think that he's washed. I don't think so. He just needs to be utilized properly, and he could really help a contender next year, I feel like, but only time will tell with that. And honestly, there's not really too much to say about this game. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks, they're another team that I would put over the Green Bay Packers to make the playoffs in the NFC potentially, because that win over the Eagles really goes a long way. Of course, Pete Carroll having that culture that he has in Seattle, he knows what it takes to win. And honestly, I don't think that this team will be a championship contender. I think they for sure can make the playoffs like they did last year when no one expected them to. So they just really have a good identity, and it was a good dub for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, this game, I was honestly surprised by. Obviously, a good response from the Atlanta Falcons, beating the Indianapolis Colts in this game 29-10 after losing by a field goal to the Carolina Panthers. But I was really surprised. I mean, like I said about the NFC South, really, I think that it's the Bucs to lose now at this point, because that loss for the Falcons last week set them back, and then same thing with the Saints losing to the Rams. But this is a really good response for the Falcons, I feel like, under Arthur Smith and things of that nature. In the Indianapolis Colts, they're trying to make the playoffs in the AFC too, so this loss could be devastating for them in terms of not only trying to make the playoffs, but trying to have a shot to win a division, because the Jaguars also lost again. But the Falcons, they came to play. Taylor Heineke, he played really good. They finally pulled the trigger on putting Desmond Ridder on the bench, and I definitely don't blame them. Heineke completed 23 out of his 33 passing attempts, had 229 passing yards and a touchdown. Bijan Robinson had 122 total yards, combined with receiving and rushing, of course. And for the Colts, like I said, it's a devastating loss, man, if you're trying to make the playoffs in the AFC. I feel like if you're in the NFC trying to make the playoffs, you can afford a loss more than you can in the AFC. I mean, that goes without saying in my eyes. But the only way the Falcons make the playoffs is if they win the division. And now at this point, they split the season series with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they still are under 500. So conversation to be had there for sure. But if the Colts win out, there's a possibility that they can make it. Luck will have to be on their side, and of course the Jaguars will have to fold and crumble a lot, which they are right now, because I believe this is their 4th loss in a row. But ultimately, it was a good win for the Atlanta Falcons. Let's talk about that Tampa Bay and Jacksonville game. Honestly, it really wasn't close, and the final score showed that the Buccaneers won 30-12. Both of these teams now have 8-7 records. Like I said, the Bucs, I feel like they're gonna win the NFC South and host another playoff game like they did last year. And honestly, I respect this team more than last year's team, because Tom Brady, we love him, he is the GOAT, but he was a very diminished version of himself for sure. But Baker Mayfield, he's been playing really good football, and honestly, he deserves a contract extension from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I feel like they'll give it to him. It's really crazy, because before the year, he reached out to the Buccaneers to try to get an opportunity, and he won the job, and he's played with a chip on his shoulder, and ultimately his moxie, his talent, and his football IQ overall is helping the Buccaneers play really good football and overcome expectations. He had a really good game, had 283 passing yards, completing 26 out of his 35 passing attempts, went for 2 touchdowns. I mean, just the team played well overall. Rashad White had a touchdown. Mike Evans had 86 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And that defense is dominant. I mean, we know how good they are. They were good last year, but they dealt with a lot of injuries. And of course, they've been good for the past few years. Even before Tom Brady stepped into the fold with that Super Bowl season, they had a really good defense. They just needed better and competent quarterback play, and they're getting that for sure this year, even without having Tom and Brady. And for the Jaguars, they're just dropping games left and right. They were 8-3, now they're 8-7. It really sucks to see this for them in Duval Nation. Trevor Lawrence had 211 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions, losing the turnover battle. That's always going to go a long way. And the Buccaneers, they took advantage of those turnovers, winning the game. Now, before I get into this game, if y'all see my shirt, it does say Dallas. This is a Luka Doncic jersey. I love Luka. He's one of my favorite 3 players in the NBA, but I like to keep my favorite team a mystery on this channel. I've said who it was in previous weeks, who my favorite NFL team is, so if y'all want to know, y'all can find out. But so with that being said, the Dallas Cowboys played against the Miami Dolphins. They traveled for this Christmas Eve game and they lost, losing by a field goal, 20-22. The Cowboys now have a 10-5 record, and now the Dolphins are 11-4. And it was a really good game, honestly. Both defenses came to play for sure. The Cowboys defense, they only allowed 1 touchdown, but the Miami Dolphins made 5 field goals, and that ended up winning them the game. And the Cowboys continue to struggle on the road. They are totally 2 different teams when they play at home and on the road, and they're gonna have to travel on the road for the playoffs for sure. And honestly, I don't see them doing really much in the playoffs. It sucks to say that because we recognize how good of a team Dallas has year in and year out, how talented they are and how good they are defensively, but at times they slip. And offensively, of course, you can say things about the offensive line, Tyron Smith not playing and things of that nature. That fumble really cost them at the beginning of the game in that opening drive, because they were cooking on that drive. They would have scored that touchdown. You could make the argument that they would have won the game. It would have set the tone for a lot. The Miami Dolphins would have been playing more desperate and things of that nature, but the Cowboys, they weren't able to create any turnovers on Tua Tagovailoa, who played a solid game, having 293 passing yards and a touchdown. And that didn't play bad either. He had 2 touchdowns, had 253 passing yards, but they still lost the game. And a really good, respectable win for the Miami Dolphins, because there were questions about if they could really beat a good team, and they did. So both of these teams, it'll be interesting to see what they do in the playoffs. Of course, with Dallas down the stretch, they have 2 final games against the Detroit Lions and then the Commanders, which really shouldn't be too crazy for them in week 18. Both of these teams, they have a lot on the line, and it's a good win for Miami. Hey man, low-key, the Chicago Bears, they've been playing really good football lately. Justin Fields, like I said, he deserves to be the quarterback of the future for them. Draft talent around him, man. Don't move on from him. I know it's easy to reset a rookie contract, but bro, he is a really good quarterback. Of course, he had his struggles at the beginning of the season, but he's been playing good as of late. And that Chicago Bears defense has been playing really good too. They won this game over the Arizona Cardinals 27-16. They are now 6-9. Both of these teams not really playing for too much. Of course, the Cardinals are eliminated from playoff contention, but I feel like the Bears coaching staff, they're really coaching for their job, and they might be keeping it because they've been playing really good down the stretch. They're gonna have 2 early first-round picks. Of course, having Carolina's pick for 2024. Like I said, man, draft Marvin Harrison Jr., draft talent around Justin Fields, continue to build a team, and maybe even make the playoffs in 2024. That's the plan. I think that they should stick with for sure. This was a good one for Chicago. This Sunday night football game that took place on NFL Network was actually way more exciting than I thought it would be. At first, the game started off really boring. Broncos laid an egg. The Patriots were actually playing dominant football. But then the Broncos were able to make some plays. Russell Wilson was connecting with his receivers, and they had a shot to take the lead and win the game despite how slow they started. But that came to no avail, as the Patriots still won, winning the field goal and winning the game 26-23. The Broncos now have a 5% chance to make the playoffs in the AFC. Their record now falling under 500 now with a 7-8 record. Really tough and devastating and demoralizing loss for Denver. Russell Wilson did have a really good game, of course. He threw for 237 passing yards, had 2 touchdowns. But the thing about that is that they started off slow. If he would have started off the game fast, they would have made plays from the start. And this is a game that they're for sure going to regret after not making the playoffs last year, after starting off so slow and then having that 5-game winning streak this season, and then now dropping this game and just playing some eerie football over the past few weeks. I really honestly don't think that the Broncos will make the playoffs, and they're going to have a lot to evaluate in this offseason for sure. It's a really good win for the Patriots, who really didn't have much to play for, who were already eliminated from playoff contention, but a good win for them. Bailey Zappi, he had a really good game, had 256 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns, and also completed 25 out of his 33 passing attempts, so really an efficient game for them and for the Patriots overall. A game that honestly I was ready to snooze on, but it actually ended up being pretty good. Now let's talk about some of these Christmas Day games. Some were certainly eventful and some were shocking for sure in this first one between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders. A divisional in the AFC West, and the Las Vegas Raiders were able to win the game 20-14. Really, the Chiefs offense, like I've said, this is the most vulnerable team that we've seen so far in the Mahomes era. The offensive line was getting bum rushed by the Las Vegas Raiders defense. Patrick Mahomes throwing interceptions and a pick 6. Really just their offense was struggling the entire game, and we never seen the Chiefs look like that in Arrowhead. So it's definitely alarming. The Chiefs are now 9-6. The best they can be is 11-6 on the season. They can still win the division, but they've just been dropping games. I believe they are 3-5 in their last 8 games after starting the season 6-1. So definitely is alarming. This team is good, but do I really expect them to make any serious noise in the playoffs when you have teams like the Ravens, and to a lesser extent the Miami Dolphins playing the way they are in the AFC? Not really. And the Buffalo Bills, how they're playing as well. I do not think that this is the same type of Chiefs team after winning the Super Bowl last year. They're just different. There has been a significant drop off for sure. A lot of reasons why. You can say that it's because of Airbnb leaving. I don't think that's the sole reason. I think really they just have a lack of maturity on the receivers end and lack of talent ultimately. I mean, Rashid Rice, he has played good and had his moments, but in this game he only had 57 receiving yards. So really just a lackluster performance from the Kansas City Chiefs. And for the Las Vegas Raiders, they had a really good game overall collectively. Like I said, defensively, Max Crosby, really the whole defense in Las Vegas were able to step up their game and elevate in this matchup. Josh Jacobs, of course, running back for the Las Vegas Raiders, didn't play in this game. But his replacement, Zamir White, had 22 carries for 145 rushing yards. A really dominant game. The Chiefs were struggling to stop the run. So it's just a really good win for the Raiders, and definitely an alarm should be going off for the Kansas City Chiefs. This next game, the Eagles were able to win, but it's still alarming in the fact that they struggle with the Giants. Jalen Hurts throwing a 76-yard pick six. The Giants really still having a chance to score a touchdown and potentially get a 2-point conversion to put the game into overtime. I mean, that was very alarming. The game was 33-25. The Eagles did win, and that's the biggest thing, and they're back to being the 2nd seed and overall the leaders of the NFC East right now. But still, there's just a lot of question marks with their defense and their team overall. I mean, Jalen Hurts, like I said, he's looking more like of his 2021 version more than last year. And of course, he has all those rushing touchdowns, I believe 15 now, but a lot of those come from the push and things of that nature. But we recognize how good he is out of the pocket. Man, in Philadelphia, I wouldn't be the most confident if I was a fan of the Eagles based on how they've been performing. Really, this team is a far cry from what they were last year, how dominant they were defensively and how innovative they were offensively. Now, obviously, losing coordinators makes a huge difference. Losing Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, but at the end of the day, if your team is good enough, you're going to lose coaches. So it's about how you can adjust to that. And it's been a roller coaster this season. They've had their highs, they've had their lows, like any team's has. And it's going to be interesting down the stretch to see where they go. The last game that took place on Christmas was the matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Baltimore Ravens. Arguably a potential Super Bowl 58 matchup, but this game was not that close as its final score indicated. The Baltimore Ravens won 33-19. At one point in the game, we're up 33-12. Just really balled offensively and defensively as a whole unit, forcing the San Francisco 49ers to 5 total interceptions, 4 from Brock Purdy, 3 in the first half, and then also Sam Darnold threw 1 when he came into the game. It was just really a bludgeoning and dominant performance from the Ravens. I do believe that Lamar Jackson should be the leading candidate to be this year's NFL MVP. Maybe it's not the same as his NFL MVP campaign that he won in 2019, but it looks better as a team. This team is for sure the best team that he's had, having new assets and people like Zay Flowers, even adding Odell Beckham Jr., who's older but still provides that respect from defenses. Rashad Bateman making plays. Of course, Mark Andrews isn't playing right now, but Isaiah Likely stepping in at the tight end position. So just a lot of key assets, and Todd Monken being in there as his first year as an offensive coordinator coming from Georgia. Just playing really good, having Lamar Jackson play great, still utilizing his running ability, and he's really improved as a passer. Not to say that he wasn't really good in past seasons, but he really has taken a leap in terms of his passing ability this season. So it's just really good to see how great he played. And for the 49ers, this is the most pedestrian performance we've seen this season with their team fully loaded. Those 3 losses they had, of course, came without Trent Williams and Deebo Samuels in the lineup, so we cut them some slack there. But this game, like we have been talking about, we expected the 49ers really to win, honestly, how dominant they had been killing teams. And the Ravens said, hold on, we're going to do that. So right now, you can't say that the Ravens aren't the best team in the league right now. I mean, they literally just beat the 49ers, who we thought were the best. So you beat the best, you are the best, and that's what the Ravens did. Have to respect them for that for sure. And I believe we could see this in the Super Bowl again, but I don't know. The playoffs are always unpredictable. It's never what we think it will be, honestly, for the most part. And it was just a really good game. But anyways, guys, that's the video. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about this NFL Week 16. I appreciate you guys watching. Always make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SwaggyRuss, and also on TikTok at SwaggyRuss02 for cooking videos, shorts, content, reels, and things of that nature. More videos are on the way, guys. Almost the end of 2023. 2024 is going to be a great and blessed year. Know that y'all can do all things through Christ, man. Just keep being legendary. I appreciate the support always. Love creating this content. Love talking about sports, lifestyle, and pop culture with y'all. I'll be blessed. Y'all have a good one.